Welcome to Conversations with Friends. I'm your host, Bobtheorc, and tonight we're going to be talking about the recording industry with Tom Spahn. Tom has won an Emmy for designing the Animal Orchestra for Sesame Street. He won another Emmy for some of his musical work with All My Children, and I think he was nominated for a Grammy once. Although this is some of that was before my time. So here we are. Good evening, Tom, and thank you for hanging with us.
Good evening.
So, so you've got more recording experience than probably anybody that I know, um, and because by the time you were recording some of Mom's music back in the day, you were already kind of an industry veteran. And how did you get started in the recording industry? Where was your beginning?
Well, I got started at home with a two-track recorder that had sound on sound.
Now, what's sound on sound?
Well, I think you could record on one track and then you could play it back and record something more with it on the other track
Okay.
and go back and forth between the two
So
tracks.
these are like those old cassette tapes where they had several tracks,
Right,
and
but
and you could.
there were only two at the beginning for me.
Okay, okay.
The stereo recorder, and you could do sound on. There was the big deal was sound on sound and sound with sound. And I'm not exactly sure what the difference was, but I know that you would bounce between the two tracks. It's a little bit Sergeant Pepper era.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because when I first met you, um, I was just a little kid, and I remember that because you're largely responsible for getting me involved in computers, but I seem to recall you having the actual rubber ducky from Sesame Street. Wasn't that your rubber ducky? What's the story behind that?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure it passed through the studio at time, but Dick Maitland is the sound effects man for Sesame, so I'm sure he has the actual rubber ducky.
Okay.
Maybe there was one there at the studio that when you were a kid, you thought that must be the rubber
Yeah, I
duck.
think because I thought you showed me something about that. So,
Well, you believe almost anything I tell you.
well, yeah, because I was a little kid, and
Well, you still do, I think.
maybe I don't know. So, you're doing these two-track recording, and then because
Well, I started when I was a kid. My dad helped me get a recorder. There was a piano there, and helped me buy a microphone. And then it ended up being I bought a sound system, a Shure Vocal Master sound system, and then we would record. We would perform live with that.
right,
And I really didn't get into recording until I came to New York. And then I ended up at NOLA Recording, which is where you met me.
right.
I
I
went to
remember
NOLA.
Nola.
I went to NOLA in 1980. I started at NOLA, and I think I met your parents around 1990, didn't I?
Somewhere around there. I remember I was still pretty young, and it might have been before that because I think I was pretty young still. But you, I remember you having all these. You're building a synthesized orchestra.
Well, it was your dad who pushed that.
Was it really?
Your dad wanted I had a Kurzweil 250,
Right.
which is what I moved up to Sesame with, and I guess I moved up to NOLA in 1985 is when I moved up to NOLA, and I had the Kurzweil 250 and a Macintosh computer, and I bought a MCI JV16, which was the 16 track recorder, which then there was a retrofit to make it a 24 track recorder.
Right.
And I had that. And then I used their board. They had an MCI board. I'm not sure what the model was now. Um, and so in 1985, I got started up there. And then your dad reached out to Danny Epstein,
Okay. I
who
think I
was
remember
the
him.
contractor for Sesame Street.
Right.
And your parents were wanted to make a digital orchestra for your mother to sing with. And your dad and mom pushed me to get more and more samples so that I could run more orchestra at the same time. And really, what was amazing about that era was we used Performer, and Celeste Montemoreno, who was your mother's accompanist and musical
Right.
director, um, she came in and we designed the MIDI so that it would follow your mother. In other words, most times when people make a track, they make a track and then they sing on top of it.
Right.
But because this was opera, your mother, you know, the orchestra has to follow the singer.
Right. Right.
So we've designed it so that we could make the MIDI orchestra follow um, your mother performing live, and Celeste would do tap tempo and tap the beats on a keyboard, and the synthesizer would follow that orchestration.
So she was literally conducting the digital
Every
orchestra.
take. Your mother, your Celeste was conducting the orchestra for every take. Yeah.
Okay, I was probably too young to know what she was doing then. I know that she was doing something and that her role was critical, but I never really understood what she was. That's fascinating. So she
Well,
was
and Celeste and I worked many hours making those sequences so that they could do that. And Celeste and I, we obviously get tired. It's
yeah.
tedious. And so I would go, oh, I can't do this anymore. And Celeste goes, no, no, you can do it. And then I would be going along, and Celeste goes, oh, I can't do this anymore. I go, oh, come on, Celeste, you can do it. So what our joke was between the two of us is that between the two of us, we made one honest person.
I was talking to Celeste on the phone the other day, and I bet what one of the we should do at some point in the future. We should do a follow up and actually get you and her both together
That
on
would
a
be fun.
conference. That'd be really cool. And we could talk more about that.
That would
Uh,
be fun. But
because
so that's how my MIDI orchestra, the TRA orchestra, got um, pushed along.
okay, because wasn't it? Because at the time it was some pretty advanced stuff, right? It was probably
Oh yeah. No,
the largest digital orchestra at the time.
I had four Kurzweil 250s in boxes. I think they were called RMX 250s.
Right.
I had four of those. I had the keyboard, the RMX, and then we had other synthesizers. But see, it was all external and it was all connected through MIDI. It was very laborious and tedious to. It was like cranking up a Model T to get all that
To
happening
get
at
it
the
going,
same
yeah.
time.
And you probably had to start all up in a certain sequence and just get everything
Yeah, it was
tuned
it was
before.
a little, and now they can do that all in a computer. You don't need a whole room full of synthesizers.
Yeah, yeah, because you had a room about the size of the building that I'm in, just filled with technology, and there wasn't a lot
I
of
did,
walking space.
I did, and we did a lot. We had a lot back then.
And Mom had this little tiny booth that she
She'd
was
be
in.
in the
Yeah.
booth, and we went out and got a Telefunken 251 microphone for her.
And then you had a
And
Chuck Yeager flight simulator on your Mac in your office to keep me distracted, so I wouldn't get
oh
in the way.
yeah, okay, exactly. That's what we would do. Yeah.
Yeah, to keep me and my brother busy.
So
So
anyway, that was a big push that your parents were behind making that happen.
now, were they one of the earliest people pushing that kind of technology then, or were there other people trying to do that
No,
at that scale?
they were that was the first time they went to Danny Epstein and said, "Hey, can you do this?" And Danny said, "If you're going to do it, you have to talk to Tom." And then that's how we met.
Oh wow, okay.
And people were doing synthesizers, but just as a little track here and there, not the idea of the whole orchestra playing at once. That was
And
that was
so you and Mom and Dad actually did the first large scale digital orchestra then.
that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Wow, okay. I didn't. Wow, that gives me new respect for Dad. That's pretty awesome. Uh, So I thought, because I thought you already had all that stuff just kind of set up, and they just showed up and did it because I was.
No, we would get it to a certain point, and then your dad and your mom, but more your dad, would say, "Well, couldn't we do? Couldn't we make it even better if we did? If we, you know your dad."
Yeah, yeah. Well, he was always a big technology nut. I remember his reel-to-reel tape players and stuff, uh,
And
all
and when
stereo
you talk
systems.
about your computers getting started, I had a laptop. I think it was the
Yeah,
170.
is a Power Mac one is a power of what PowerBook 170 or
Yes, and so I had one of those, and it got to a point where it was old or whatever, and I wanted to get a newer one, so I
right,
said I wanted to trade it in, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll give you $200 for it or something."
right,
And I said, "It's worth more than that." They go, "Yeah, but we have to resell it and make a profit or whatever." I said, "I'll give it to Bobtheorc." So I give it to your dad, and the next thing I know, your dad has three more for all of you,
well,
and
just
you
because
all had one.
well, so that first night that you gave it to him, Dad and Mom, they were arguing. They're trying to figure out how to turn it on because it had a little back cover that you had to flip open to hit the power button, and they didn't see the back cover to flip it open, and they couldn't find the power button, and so I had to show them how to turn it on. I've actually got the laptop. It's somewhere. It's in
You
my
still
server.
have it
Yeah, it's
to
in my
this day.
server room up on one of the shelves. I think
Nice.
I'll go if I'd been thinking about it, I would have pulled it out and I would have shown it to you. But no, I still
Or you
have it
can take
somewhere.
a picture and add it to this
Yeah, yeah,
conversation.
I'll go find it and take a picture. That's a good idea. I'll see if I can find it. But I'm pretty
But
sure it's
anyway,
on the shelf.
that computer, your dad, we did so much work with your dad, and when they were going to offer me nothing for a computer that I'd spent $2,000 for before, I said, well, rather than just throw it away, I'll give it to the Bob Deaver. So I give it to
Right.
him. And the next thing I know, he's got four of them.
Yeah, because dad gave it to me and I used that all through high school and part of college.
Yeah.
And I mean that lasted me a long. I think it still turns on. I haven't turned it on in probably 10 years. But
Well, that's the thing I like about Apple overall is that through all these years, I started with Apple in probably, well, 1985 is when I moved up to NOLA, and I probably got a computer a little before then. So the early 80s, I got my first Mac, but they last so long. Even if it couldn't do the cutting edge stuff, it was good for word processing, or it
yeah,
was good
yeah.
for and I would get 10 years out of computers, and it's still pretty much that way. I'm right now, I'm talking to you on a computer that's probably about 5 years old, and next to me I've got another computer that's 10 years old.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
the
do, you just say, okay, that's what that one does, and this is what this one does. I'm getting ready to build a studio here in my home now, and they're telling me that for me to use the best interfaces, both of these computers are too old. They don't have Thunderbolt 3. Is that what they're up to now?
on the Apples, I'm not sure. I'm not as because I do mostly PC stuff now.
Yeah. I
Uh,
think it's Thunderbolt 3 that they want. So I'm going to have to probably buy another computer to be devoted to recording because, for years I've been working up at the Sesame Studios, and I still go in there, but I can't bring anyone in there right now because it's so locked down because of this
because of the virus and
situation
stuff.
we're all
Yeah.
in. So, so I want to probably set up a nice situation here in my home again and rebuild that.
So tell me a little bit about the Sesame Street, because I know the last time I was there was a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you were telling me that you're doing there was some remote work because some of the actors that were some of the voice actors lived elsewhere, and you're having to
Right. Well, Cookie Monster lives in Evanston, Illinois.
right.
So when they need him for, uh, you know, if he's in town to do a shoot or something, then they bring him into the studio and we record him like always. But a lot of times they say, oh, we need him, and he goes to a studio near his home, and we hook up using Source Connect.
Now, isn't there some sort of a latency? Because you're doing it over
There
the internet.
is, there is. If he has to sing, then the song is we send the track to him to that studio, and they play it there for him, and then he sings with it.
Okay, okay,
There
and
will be latency, and they do have the technology where I could run the computer that's on his end, but that's just a little laborious.
right, right, and didn't you say that
So,
the count lives remotely also, or am I
well,
misremembering that?
uh, the count, the original count, has passed away, um, maybe 5 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago. Um,
Yeah, because I think at
but
the time you're telling me he was sick and he was recording from home or something.
yes, that he might have. But now, because of this virus, they've set all of the Muppets up, the main ones that record, with home studios, and they connect with all of them with Source Connect.
Are you finding that's easier or harder to do it remotely like that?
Well, I don't do so much of those recordings now because those recordings are done at another studio. I've forgotten the name of it right now because we don't when we started doing this in, I guess June of this last year.
Right.
uh, they went to a studio where they do the mixing and
Okay.
made that the center hub.
Okay. Okay.
So all I've been doing the last year is what you would call line edits, where they do the session and they record them, and the producer says, "Oh, I like the first take of this and the third take of that," and then I go in and pull out those lines and
And then you
and
mesh it together.
yeah, and do a numbering system that they can find them, and then they put it together to make a show like they're talking to each other.
Okay. Okay. Um.
But when I first started with Sesame Street, if Bert and Ernie were talking, they would bring Bert and Ernie in together and record them so that you would get the interaction, which I think is much better and sorely missed.
Yeah, I'd imagine that you being able to see the other person and whatnot.
Well, and
Uh.
them playing off of each other with
Right.
the humor, you're going to get funnier things than anyone could write or
Now,
put
can they do
together.
that with some sort of a video where they can play off of each other in video, or does the delay time make that
I think
difficult?
delay time would make that difficult,
Okay, so they have to just do all pre-recorded,
line by line, and everyone does their lines, and then they
and then
put
it's
it
not as
together.
organic.
Exactly.
Okay,
I would
okay,
much rather have them come into the studio and,
and then just
and
be able
play.
to, yeah, just be able to have a good time. Now you told me a story once, and I don't remember the details, but something about how you're doing some stuff on YouTube where you were. Uh, did you do the Elmo smell like or the Grover smell like a monster or something like? There was something that you were telling me about where you had some idea and you were making some funny
Well,
video.
the first thing that Sesame did that was really YouTubey was probably what 2006 or seven, somewhere back there, maybe 10. Yeah, maybe it might have been 2008. But the first thing they did in the in Sesame in a YouTubey way of green screening and all that is they did a takeoff of the Irish Spring or the Old Spice commercial
Right.
with I think it was it Grover?
I think it was Grover.
Yeah.
Now were you
And
involved in that, or were you just telling me that they did that?
no, I did the audio recording for that.
Okay. Now what gave you guys the idea to do that?
Well, for me, they told me we were going to do it, so I wasn't part of the decision of whether we were going to do it or not. They just said we're going to do it. But they knew that they needed to build a studio they knew that that was the direction they needed to go. And Jay, who was the director, put that together, and they did all the timings, and they knew they needed a shot this long. And that this is the one where he ends up with he's on a
He's
horse
on a
at the
horse.
end,
Yeah, I think so.
except Grover's on a cow, of course.
Right, right, right. Okay.
And that when they put that together and put that out on YouTube, which was what everyone was, what is YouTube? When they put that out, all of a sudden there were millions of
Oh,
people that,
it was hilarious. It was hilarious. As soon as I saw it, I called you up. I was like, Tom, did you do this? Is
yeah.
this one of your
And
pranks?
so that made everyone all excited about what the internet could do,
Right.
because the corporation moves slower and is more monolithic. I'll tell you that there's always an upside to everything that happens, and this isolation that we're all in because of this pandemic has really moved the digital world ahead much faster than
Yeah.
it would have gone.
Well, there's a lot more. There's a lot of more remote meetings.
Yeah,
People are finding new and unique hobbies. Look at me. I'm bored, so I'm making videos on the
right.
internet now.
It leads to this kind of stuff. Now, the Skype was around 20 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
we did a lot of
this
stuff
is
on
really
Skype.
nothing more than Skype, but for some reason, Zoom made it friendlier for everyone, and here we are.
Well, I'm I'm not a big fan of Zoom, but what I like about Zoom is that I can format the two windows right next to each other. I can set up kind of a grid view, whereas Skype's just a little bit weird to work with as far as setting up to present on a
Well, they made it friendly.
yeah, they just made it easy.
Yeah.
And
And that's where, Apple is with Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs made it, said, no, 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 no. We should be able to have our music in our pocket,
yeah,
and next thing you know, we have our music in our pocket. Now we've got it in our phone with the whole schmigeel, right? You got a camera, you've got everything in your phone.
yeah, yeah.
20 years ago, that would have been 4 devices to get that going.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you're right because I remember I used to have I'd have some big digital camera, and I never really, I had my CD player that I would for listening to music when I'm at the gym, and I had my regular cell phone, and no, there was no, everything's becoming a lot more compact and cross compatible. Because I can take a picture, I can go and send a picture, record a video, or whatever, put something up onto my computer. Everything's becoming more integrated.
One device that
Right.
does it all.
And that was probably one of the problems you had back in the old NOLA days was getting all these different pieces of equipment to talk to each other, wasn't it?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, MIDI, when I first started working on the classical project for your parents, MIDI was 16 channels. That was it.
Yeah.
So you had to sit there and say, oh, how are we going to do that? And about a year into that project, Mark of the Unicorn really figured out how to make it 16 cables, with each cable having 16 channels.
Okay. Which then gave you 16 squared channels, essentially.
Oh, and that was that, and
That was
that's
huge.
when your dad said, "Oh, let's get more synthesizers."
Okay. Okay.
And that was a big breakthrough. And then then there was and Mark of the Unicorn was what they were great, and they still are a very good sequencer. I left that for Apple's Logic, but when I went to Logic could not do the tap tempo, so I never went to the classical project to Logic because but Logic is an interesting story, Gerhard Langley, there was a computer out called the Atari.
Mm-hmm.
Was it the Atari? And the Red Clay Ramblers would come into NOLA and they would do movie scores for different movies. I can't remember them right off the top of my head here, but they would, come in and say, we're going to do the sound score for a movie. And they showed up with I had my Mac set up with with a performer, and the Red Clay Ramblers show up with this Atari computer, and they're playing things on their Atari, and the music is writing up on the screen like immediately, which was just everyone's going, what's that? How's that happening? And they kind of humbled me actually a little bit with my little setup. This might have been about the time I got started on the classical project with your folks. But anyway, then the Atari computer just did not hit market level and just faded away. But the music sequencer on there was written by Gerhard Langley, who then said, you know what, I'm not going to be beholden to any operating system. I'm going to run it down to machine language. What is it that Apple started doing first?
I don't remember.
They everyone was at C language and basic and all these other languages. And Gerhard said, no, I'm writing it down on machine language.
Just down on assembly or something?
There's a term, I can't remember what the name of it is, but there was a point where Steve Jobs said, we're going to that language too on Apple. And they went and bought Logic, and that's GarageBand, which also is Logic now.
Okay, so that all evolved into GarageBand that everybody's using nowadays.
Exactly.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And so GarageBand is the user-friendly, pared down version of Logic.
Okay.
But Logic is to this day what I use to be creative. If I have to write music or do something creating music, I go to Logic. Okay. If I have to record multiple things or mix or finalize recordings, then I use Pro Tools. And those are the two main.
Now, is Pro Tools just more complicated than Logic, or?
Pro Tools is like a tape machine.
Oh, okay.
Pro Tools works like a tape machine. Logic works like a sequencer.
Okay.
And so I can sit there and say, give me a piano sound, and then I play a piano. And then give me a drums. And Logic now, I mean, gets a rhythm section going for you in no time, which is just great. So Logic is more creative. Pro Tools is more of a recorder.
Okay. And so let's talk on the creative side, because you've done a lot of composition stuff, and I know you've done a lot of jazz stuff. Why don't you how do you get into writing music?
Well, I mean, the Beatles. I mean, when the Beatles showed up, I was like 8 years old. It was like, wow. So that was neat. And my parents ran a music conservatory that they opened the year I was born.
Okay.
So I literally grew up the way you used to show up at the recording studio with your mom. I would show up at this music conservatory probably a lot more often because my parents owned it. And all the music people in the suburbs of Chicago where I grew up, my dad was a lot like your dad, where he would see a problem and say, oh, we can solve that.
Okay.
So my mother was a musician, and all of her friends were complaining that the only way they could make a living was to go downtown and work at the American Conservatory and this and that. And my dad goes, well, we live in the suburbs here. There's tons of kids that need music lessons. Let's open a conservatory. So we
Okay.
opened a conservatory in my hometown, and there were all these top drawer musicians that would make a living in Chicago that would say, "Oh, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll teach at
I'll just
the."
drop on by.
Yeah, and so there were all these musicians and people around that I got to, I was the son of the owners, so I
And so you just start picking stuff up.
yeah, and they and I would take lessons, and then I'd get bored with that and do this, and then I ended up, putting uh, well, I guess, well, it was a Beatle type band first, doing the Hendrix and Beatles and the stuff in the late '60s, but then Chicago came out with the brass and the horns, and me being in the band and stuff, of course, then I put together my Blood, Sweat, and Tears band, and we did those songs,
Right.
and that got me making music. Then Godspell came, or Jesus Christ Superstar came out.
Yeah.
Then I started doing that. Now, see, I have my Shure Vocal Master now, so now we're doing performances at the churches doing Jesus Christ Superstar. And then Godspell came out, and we did that, and that's pretty much what I did in high school. And then I went on the road with a show band called the Wright Brothers that we did a lot of, like the Plaza Hotel. We in the early '70s, hotels would have show bands,
In their lounges and stuff,
in
right?
their lounges, and
Right.
so you could tour around and do that. My first job out of high school was playing the Playboy Club in Chicago. And so, and then there were Playboy clubs in a lot of big towns, and we would tour that for a while. Then that kind of went away, and then I ended up in New York. In 1975, I came to New York, and then I started playing cabarets and things.
So what?
And it was during that time that I really started writing, and that was your question.
Okay.
That's when I started meeting people that said, "Oh, I've got an idea, let's do this," and then I would start writing songs with them. And then that led to me ending up at NOLA Recording as a recording engineer.
Okay. So, because there's a lot of musicians out there, and I know that a lot of them have a real hard time, achieving success. You're one of the few successful musicians I
Well,
know.
me too, me too.
I don't know. A couple of Emmys is a lot more successful than most people's garage bands.
Yeah, well, that and about $4 will get me a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
That is true. That is true. Um, but no, you have had a lot more success than your average kid who gives up on it after high school. What was it? Just sheer persistence that let you get to where you are, or was it
Well,
particular talent
I
or?
think there were people that helped me along the way. When I was young, my mother's best friend was a man named Cecil Gorey, who was just an incredible networker. And I moved to New York. I guess the first big thing that I really did is I met a woman named Ramona Brooks, who was one of the original flashy ladies for Barry Manilow.
Okay.
And so I was playing a cabaret, and Ramona and I met there, and I started playing for her. And then we started putting shows together. She left Barry Manilow to start her own career. And Cecil, who was a promoter of mine when I was a kid, um, got wind of me doing whatever I was doing here in New York, and he came to New York and promoted Ramona and me, and it was, I think it's teamwork. It's teamwork like with your father. Your father wanted a digital orchestra to play for your mother, and I was the guy who could do it. you know.
So it's really just, you have to be skilled enough, and you have to know enough people, and you have to really put yourself out there.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, in the old day, I talk about it as the old days. You would be in a studio like NOLA. You had to go to a recording studio to record.
Right, right.
You don't have to do that now. Now you have to have an Insta chat and a YouTube
And a computer.
and a computer. No, but I mean, it's another thing that I'm working on, trying to reinvent myself, because I really like to go into the studio and work with somebody.
Right, right.
This pandemic has made it that I can't do that right now.
Well, and
So that
you're quite a character to work with. You know, if I recall, you and Mom were always joking, and Celeste, and you guys are always. It always appeared to me that you guys were having a great time.
oh yeah, very important to
I
have a
mean, you
good
guys
time.
would be there all the time. It didn't seem like you were working; you're just hanging out and having a good old time and making music. And
Yes, I mean we had our agenda, which more often than not was set by Celeste because she was the musical director.
right,
But she would be working on the pieces that your mother wanted to sing,
yeah.
and then we say, "Hey, we're ready to do it," and then we come in and we do it, and that's
And I guess Celeste was always pretty good about keeping everybody focused and in the right direction. Or
well, that's what I'm saying. Between
yeah,
Celeste and I, we made one honest
yeah.
person.
So, um, so what? So tell me about what you're working on. Tell me about what you're working on now. What are your dreams for the future?
Well, I love to vocal coach. I love to get people to sing better. I had the good fortune to work with a man named Colin Romoff from 1980 till 2008 when he passed away. So I had a good 28 years with him. And he was the vocal coach for Sound of Music, My Fair Lady,
Oh,
Music
no
Man,
kidding.
Tiffany. He the Andy Williams show back in the 60s.
Right.
He used to put together their openings and this and that. Wonderfully, wonderful, creative person. And so I had the good fortune to work with him, and through him, I learned a lot about coaching and getting, not so much teaching someone how to sing, but teaching someone how to execute it better. And really, it comes down to phonics.
So a vocal coach works with somebody who already knows how to sing.
Yeah, and kind of sets the song and says, "Oh, if you do this, or we could do it in this key," or you know, a lot of Colin worked. Gypsy was Ethel Merman, and there was no sound system then in the 50s.
Right.
There was Ethel Merman standing on a stage with an orchestra, and Ethel Merman had to sing and get it to the back row of the audience. So there was a little different philosophy of performing and singing back then. And then of course I here in my home in 1980, 81, I was setting up a studio basically in my living room, and I met Colin and I said, "Boy, I really want to work with him." So I went and bought another piano and put it in the other room and said, "You can work here, no charge." Which and when you say how do you get into the business, you find the most talented person that you can and figure out how you can be near them,
And how to help them.
how I can help them and they can help me.
Right.
And by me having that, Colin moved up here in 1980 ish, and worked up here until 1985 or so. So there was 5 years that we worked together a lot. And then I moved up to NOLA, and Colin then would work out of his home at that point. We kind of grew apart, but we grew together, because when I got the orchestra, Colin would say, "Oh, Oh, that's something I should do. People want an example of what I do. I'll send you an orchestration that I did with Colin with the TRA Orchestra.
Right.
Uh, that's Guys and Dolls, and he did instrumental versions of
And so
Guys and
once you
Dolls.
so once you built that orchestra with Dad, you're able to use it for a lot of other things, right?
Exactly. Colin hears it and goes, "Oh, well, here I want to write something for that."
Okay.
But see, Colin, I knew before your dad, but he would see it grow and see me grow in the technology, and then he would, then we would do something. Thank you. That's good. Someone was just asking me to send an example of something that I produced, and that's unique on its own. Otherwise, I'm just a worker bee at Sesame Street. I, either recorded the vocals back in the day, back in the days when you were a kid, you know, they would come in and record their vocals
All
at
right.
the studio. But now, you know, everybody does it in their own home or wherever, it's not as studio oriented.
Now, are you able to get the same kind of quality in your own home? Because I know that at NOLA you had all that sound dampening on the walls, and you had.
I'll give you a story. I was doing something with Kevin Clash, and he was. This is this was the year the Pope came to visit New York, whatever year that was.
Okay.
And
I sort of
Kevin
remember that.
Kevin needed to record a demo of something, and he's at home in California, I think, at that point. And he said, "Tom, would you help me edit it and put it together?" I said, "Sure." And I said, "What? You're going to go into the studio and send me some tracks?" He goes, "I can." And so he took his iPhone, threw a blanket over himself, and did his lines to his iPhone, and then sent me the iPhone. And I
The
mixed.
blanket was able to sound dampen
The
enough.
blanket did the same thing that the studio did with the
Oh,
soundproofing.
no kidding. I might need to think about that. Yeah, no, I need to sound. I need to do some sound dampening in here because I have the fan noise from the computer gets picked up by the mic because I just have just a basic headset. But I could put a blanket between it. I might try that.
Well, you don't want to put a blanket over your fan
No, no,
because
no, no, no. Put a blanket, hang a blanket between my computer and my little recording area because
oh yeah,
I've got the
yeah.
computer off over there. Maybe some foam or something
Well,
to.
no, just hang a blanket.
Yeah,
Get rid of it.
I'll give that a try when I rework
So
this.
I was working on something the other day, and someone said, "Oh, well, we can't get together with Ivy." Ivy Austin is Danny Epstein's daughter,
Right.
who I still do some projects with. But of course, we can't get together and go in the studio. But they wanted to record something for a project called the Hickory Bench Playhouse. I'll give a little plug. That's something that I work on.
Right.
Uh, that that is some kind of a podcast. But they wanted Ivy to record some more things, and they said, "Well, I don't know how we can do it." And I told them, "Just have her put a blanket over her and record it to the phone." You would be amazed. I was amazed at how good it sounded.
Was it like a thick, heavy blanket or a wool blanket or a
I don't know. It's just a
the?
blanket.
Okay. I'm gonna go. I'm
If
gonna go
you put a
play.
blanket over yourself and hold an iPhone inside, there's not going to be any reflections.
Yeah. Well, there we go. That's the easiest pro tip I've heard in a long time.
Well, and I just gave it to them a week ago.
Yeah.
I said, "Just have Ivy," and they called me back and said, "Ivy said she'll give it a try." So they'll send her the script, and she'll hold her iPhone in voice memo mode and read the script and do what she does.
Huh.
And I bet you it'll be just fine.
And then any imperfections you can kind of sort out in post production, right?
Uh, any imperfections, people are going to say, "How did you get that effect?"
Actually, that reminds me. Didn't when you're doing the orchestra, weren't you guys trying to put in some sort of artificial defects so that not all the instruments would be playing at exactly the same time? Try to put in, program in some human error.
Yes,
I seem to
yes,
recall something about that.
yes.
So how did you do that?
Oh, just
Just you had just manually put in the defects. There's no
no,
algorithm.
no. I mean, you can quantize it hard and make everything exactly where it needed to be. But I did have to be careful that with the tap tempo, you know, nothing can be before that next beat. Otherwise, a viola would just kind of creep in early
Right,
as
right.
trying to a mess. So when that click comes in, the orchestra would tumble out afterward.
Okay. Well, um, it seems that it seems that you've sort of been at the cutting edge for quite some time. Or at least you've seen the progress of all the technology. What's your prediction for the future? Are are we going to be seeing more little handheld studio in a box, or are we going to be
Studio in a blanket.
studio in a blanket? We're gonna patent that and make a little A-frame setup you just fold out and have it all. What? No. Seriously though, where do you see
Maybe
the?
you could put a blanket together that you could say, this is the best
This is the
blanket,
best studio blanket.
and copyright that, patent that, get your father to patent that.
Yeah, yeah. We'll go start selling studio blankets. Uh,
But while we're talking about the classical project, which it's out on iTunes or something, and it's
did you put it up on iTunes or?
somewhere, CD
Because I know I've
Baby.
got probably like 10,000 CDs sitting up on the storeroom
I
shelf
know
over there,
we
and
all have a lot of them, but I sent it to CD Baby or something, and I think on iTunes you can Google it, Opera Made Easy. But what's interesting to me is that your mother, now Celeste was also the translator. She did the super titles for
for the
the opera,
New York Opera.
right? Which then she retired from the New York Opera, and the Metropolitan Opera, as soon as she retired, said, "Would you work for us?" And she said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, we never would have asked you until you retired." She goes, "If I had known, I would have retired many years earlier." But Celeste was an expert at the language, and that's where she was wonderful with the opera project, is that she was an expert at this one. She knows exactly what they were saying, and she would say, "Oh, that's this."
Right.
Well, and of course, in some of the opera thing, it would say things like, "My breasts are heaving." Well, and of course, your mother loved, so that you go, "I feel," and then you go, "My breasts are heaving," and all this. Well, we put that out on iTunes, and if you look at iTunes on Opera Made Easy, I don't know whether it's still that way, but it was maybe 10 years ago that I did that. I did it right after
It
your
was right
mother
after she
passed.
died. Yeah.
Your father didn't know what to do with it, and I said, "Well, put it out on CD Baby and see what happens." So we put that out, and the Opera Made Easy is marked pornographic.
Oh no. Are you serious?
Well, yeah, it says something about adult language or
Oh
something like
no.
that. So I think if you Google it and go to iTunes and look at, I don't know whether it's still marked that way, but
Oh
of course,
goodness.
your mother wanting to talk about the breast heaving.
And Celeste's translation.
Well, yeah, and it's what is being said in German, but in America,
It it implies something a little bit different.
no, it implies something. No, it's America being puritanical and trying to be
Yeah,
purer
people
than
do get a little bit butthurt too easily about stuff.
exactly. You know, I personally I love heaving breasts.
I would imagine so.
And quite frankly, I don't think you can find many people that don't like heaving breasts.
In
But
in
for
my
some
in my in my
reason,
experience, most guys do enjoy heaving breasts.
well, and I think a lot of women like heaving breasts too.
I mean,
They know what they've got.
yeah, yeah.
So therefore, but for some reason, we want to say, "Oh, you shouldn't talk about that."
Well, I think they're probably. Yeah, I think a lot of people are worried about that 1 in a million person's going to complain, and they're worried about lawsuits. Probably. I don't
Well,
know.
when you talk about those kind of things, they used to, I'd worked on Tickle Me Elmo during
Yeah.
your era with a wonderful woman named Adrian Peters, and she was always baffled because we would put things on the chip, and there were a lot of limitations in the Tickle Me Elmo days, of 8 bits and how do you get good audio and all that. And so we would work and trying to get that to happen. But certainly there'd be some church lady in the Midwest who would decide that it's obscene what her child has, and then immediately would go on television with her child and play it. And and Adrian used to always say, now, if you were really concerned about it, wouldn't you just, as an adult parent, wouldn't you just make the toy disappear? Or would you go on television
And,
with your daughter
and make
and
sure
play it?
everybody heard it. Yeah. I guess free publicity.
Yeah, well, it's just that's the puritanical and everyone trying to pasteurize everything.
Kind of the early days of virtue signaling perhaps.
Yes.
Well, um, I don't know if has the music industry become more or less restrictive? Because you turn on the radio and you hear all kinds of things being said now that I can't imagine hearing back in the 80s or 90s.
Uh, well, I think,
Or does it just depend?
yeah,
Because
I,
all the shock
definitely,
jock stuff
it,
that Howard
it
Stern used to do is
definitely is less restrictive that way. They're certainly using language that would not have flown 20 years
right.
ago.
Well, because like all the shock jock stuff that Howard Stern used to be notorious for, nowadays it's like, I heard it on my local station, and it doesn't
Yeah.
seem to be that big of a deal. So, do you have any particular favorite genre of music? What do you like working with the best? Because I've heard you work with a lot of different types of music. Do you have a personal passion?
Well, I think that music is music.
Right.
Um,
But like I've always had a soft spot for jazz. I love jazz. I love the blues, things like that.
mhm.
Um, and and I know as much as mom, liked performing opera, she used to like some of her show tunes and some of the other stuff that she would do. She had a lot of
Yeah.
fun with those. Is there any type of music that's just more fun to work with than
I think pop music, music along the line. I think the Beatles made music fun.
was it because they had fun sounding music, or is it because they themselves were just a fun group of people you think to record with?
I think that I think that the three of them, George, John, and Paul, had had an opportunity to spend a lot of hours together. The three of them particularly,
Right.
and create a sound that the three of them played. Um, and so it got where they were an instrument onto themselves. Um,
Now there was a fourth Beatle, wasn't it? What, like Ringo or
Ringo came in a little later. Ringo was in another band that was considered to be better than the Beatles,
right?
and then at some point interacted with them. The Beatles were famous in their early days of being the band without a drummer. And they always had to piece it
They had to
together.
borrow a drummer from somebody.
They had to borrow drummers, and they just couldn't get a drummer that would mesh with them. And at one point, Paul McCartney was the drummer, but Paul said, "No, no, I don't want to be the drummer. I want to play guitar." And
Right.
so he wanted to play guitar, and and then Pete Best came in right before their fame, and he played with them for a while. But he also was an also ran. And then when they had the opportunity to, well, actually, when they had the opportunity to get Ringo, they went into the studio, and George Martin, who is the producer, said, he's no good either. Put him on the tambourine and brought in a session drummer.
Oh no.
But then I think Ringo is one of the best drummers of all time because he really listened to the lyrics and played what was appropriate to what was being said and the melody. And he didn't just play a beat.
Okay.
He played such unique beats, and everyone gives him a hard time because he isn't a flashy drummer, but as an accompanist, he was really the
Well, I
best.
guess a lot of being an accompanist is you're trying to show off the performer, show off the vocalist.
Right, and he knew how to do that. And and the Beatles, in their own little right, say that when they got a chance to play with Ringo, they said, "Oh, this here we are, we're
He's the
good."
guy. Well, I know that Mom just loved performing with Celeste. They went all over the place together,
Hmm.
and and Celeste certainly you know uh, was very solid with Mom.
Yeah, I think if you're asking me what's my favorite genre of music, I would say it's probably show music. I like working with a piano and a singer
Right.
in whatever genre that may be. But
Okay.
I enjoy a singer telling a story. If you ask me who my favorite singer is, it would have to be Frank Sinatra at this point. But I think I grew. Frank Sinatra is like a fine wine. As you get older and as you get more educated and whatever, you sit there and go, boy, he is
I
hitting on all cylinders.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I didn't like Frank Sinatra as much when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, I appreciate him a lot more.
Yes,
You know,
and I think that he really, so whatever that is, the cabaret, the singer, the show music, what if it's a piano and a voice,
yeah.
I, I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah. No, I could definitely see it. Well, and you've done a lot of just piano and voice stuff yourself too. I remember at a New Year's party you were performing I- like some restaurant or something where you and some people got together and you were just sort of
Probably, yeah.
yeah. I vaguely remember watching you do that.
Cabaret
Yeah.
used to be a big thing in New York. We used to have a lot of live performances.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll get back there
we
again
can't
soon.
even we can't even go out and eat now.
Oh man, that's got to be rough. Well, come out
Well,
to
it is
Oklahoma and
rough.
play out here. Yeah, no, it's definitely rough. You know what some of my buddies have been doing is they've been doing virtual performances where they'll get on Zoom and they're each in their own house and they'll just have Zoom jam sessions.
How do they do that without the delays? I can't imagine that happening.
I don't. Well, I mean, I guess it's.
I think the only way it can happen is someone puts out a track and then they put it, and then someone else plays to that track, and then they
I mean, there's a
they
little bit of a
pile on
delay.
top.
I think they're just screwing around and having fun. I'll ask them how they're doing that. And I know that.
I would be very interested if someone is Oklahoma and someone's in New York and they're playing
Oh,
at the same
they're all
time
they're all in
together.
they're all in Oklahoma, but
I don't
I
care
think I
whether
think they just
whether
I
they're
think
on
they
the
just
next
deal. I think they
block.
just don't care that there's a delay. I think they're just having fun.
Oh, okay. Well, if they
And
don't care about the delay, then I can't worry about it. But
yeah, no, I'm pretty sure there's a delay because you can't. The speed of light's pretty picky about not letting you get around
About
it.
how fast it will go.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I know that sometimes my neighbor will do he'll do his jam sessions, and sometimes he'll just get in his backyard and just play for the neighborhood or something. Uh,
Well,
but
that's nice.
yeah, no, we've had one of the nice things about living out in the country, so to speak, is we can all sit on our yards and we're all 30, 40 feet apart, and we can just sort of all hang out, and it hasn't hit us that badly out here.
Oh,
But
that's good.
yeah, yeah, no, it's not so bad out here at all. But
Well, it hasn't been so bad this last round in New York either. But when it first hit us in February there,
it was brutal, I heard.
I was up to about I've kind of lost the exact number, but I'm in the low 30s, 33 or 34 people that I know have gotten it, seven of which have died.
Holy crap!
And that's kind of stunning. Mike Longo, a wonderful pianist who I mastered many records for him. Um, I was talking with someone and I said, "How's Mike doing?" They said, "Oh, you didn't hear," and I was like, "Oh my goodness." So
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate out here, and but certainly we certainly started. Certainly with like what I'm doing, I'd already been working from home for years, and so it didn't really affect what I was doing that much. And with my computer business, we we're able to sort of we've always been able to have limited interactions, and so it hasn't been that bad. But yeah, for show business, that's got to be just a real mess. Uh,
well, we have Broadway closed down for a year and a half right
yeah.
now. That's a long time.
Well, um, I would imagine that people are going to try and do more virtual performances then. But yeah, doing live stuff remotely, yeah, there's not really any getting around the delay unless you just don't care. But certainly for any sort of high quality, if you want to achieve any sort of high quality in your music,
Well,
delay's going
all
to be a
of these
mess.
Zoom choirs that you see and these Zoom performances that you see, uh, the only way I can figure that they do it is they sit there and all play to a click track, and do their part,
Yeah, that
but
would that.
they're not doing it simultaneously.
Oh, I wonder if you could
And to
count.
me, half of perform, that's what we worked so hard with your mother's project, which really is not a way of doing it. There aren't many people that are going to say, "Oh, I want the track to follow the singer."
Right, right.
That was something that was unique to Opera Made Easy to any other project that I can think of.
Hmm.
I can't think of anywhere where the track follows the singer.
I mean, you could probably, with the develop, as AI develops, you could probably have a some sort of AI algorithm that could be taught how to follow the singer, but I'm not
Yeah,
sure how you do that.
I don't know. I've never. that was really what was cutting edge there, and that was what 1990. I think we finished that project in what 1994 maybe.
It was right before I graduated high school. Yeah, 93, 94, something like that, maybe.
Yeah. So that was really cutting edge, and to me that was exciting. But Celeste and I had to come up with some bizarre click tracks that she, as a being the fine musician that she is, was able to keep track of,
Okay.
and make that make all those synthesizers follow. So your mother would go da 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 ba da da. That had to be figured out. Click, click, click,
Right,
click.
right. Because with classical music, you don't always have a steady rhythm like you do in
No,
rock and
no.
roll. So, and I guess probably what's going on, with since the people I've seen do this were doing rock music, and they probably just had their rhythm down, and then if you know the rhythm and you know what the delay is, if you've got a quarter second delay, you just factor that in, and then you can fudge it a little bit. But I guess in rock music, if you've got a quarter second delay between the singer and the instrumentalist, is not as big of a deal.
Oh no, any delay is like what's going on? And there's no way that that can happen. Not with any serious music.
Yeah, you'd have to have some sort of central. You could do.
Musicians, musicians, we're spending time saying, are we in the middle of the beat? Are we behind the beat? Are we in front of the beat? All of those things make a difference in how that feels. They always say that the drummer for the Rolling Stones is great at playing on the back side of the beat, and the band is pushing ahead and he's holding them back. You know, um,
Could you do
it,
some? Could you do some John Cage type stuff, where with his your opera thing, where he had all that mix of stuff? You had to use like a clock
right,
to
but
time
but
it.
who
Who wants
wants
to
to
do
hear?
that? Yeah.
It's like, you've made a very small audience when you start doing things out of sync.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, well, I was wondering if you maybe use a clock, some sort of clock to synchronize people remotely. But
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is someone has to sit here and say, "Here's the click," and then everybody plays to that.
and then you lose that. You still lose that real life interaction. So there's no getting around that.
Right, which is we're back
We're back
to
to the beginning.
Bert and Ernie,
Yeah.
not performing off of each other.
So
So that would be, when you ask me where do I see the future, I would love to see the future get back to some kind of interaction. And I think that after this
after this mess is
experience that
over,
we're going
yeah.
through here, I think that that will come back in spades.
Oh yeah, because there's
When,
a pent up demand for live performances.
yeah.
I believe that fully. I think that's going to be the salvation of New
So
York. And
so I think that taking that away from everybody for this period makes it even more valuable.
yeah, well, there's definitely a loneliness that being away from from your loved ones and from your friends. And
Oh, wait, I have to play this. This is
okay,
my favorite. I think this was at the beginning of the pandemic. Let me get my phone. Hold
okay,
on.
let's see what we got here.
This guy, I think, did a great job. Let's see if I can find it quickly here. I think
Now,
I sent it to you.
are we going to run into any copyright claims if we play this live, or
I don't know.
I mean,
It was on the internet. It went viral. I can't find it this second, but it's the one where there's this nice young black man, and he's asked. He goes, "Well, you can do this, or you cannot see your. You can do A. You can do this, or B. You cannot see your family." He goes, "B." And it's just so funny. The whole idea of well, you probably want to cut out this section. I don't want to talk about it.
okay. Well, we can go ahead and wrap things up if you like.
We should wrap things up. It's
Yeah.
been great talking to you.
All right. Well, Tom, thanks for sitting down with me, and
My
this is sort of what I'm trying to do.
I think
And
it's good that you're doing it. It's a little human and
yeah,
interaction.
well, I want to build on personal interactions with people, and I want to talk about the things that I'm really passionate about. You know, this is ostensibly this is a gaming channel. You know, I like video games, but I also like science and technology and art and music. And so I thought, why not just do it all? You know, I'll do my gaming, I'll do my, hanging out with people I care about. I'll record conversations with Dad and with, and with my friends, and we'll see if this picks up. You know, I'm not monetizing the channel. This is just my hobby. I've got like 5 day jobs, so I don't really, I certainly don't need any more work. But
Well, I did some jokes. I always, when you say having fun, I think it's important to have fun in any session or recording or whatever.
like when you
And,
sampled my brother burping so that you could
yeah,
so you could
you're,
booby trap the
you're
Christmas music. Did you guys do the Christmas song, the Christmas album first, or the opera
we
first?
did the opera album first, but your parents wanted to release something because the opera album was taking longer, so we did the Christmas album.
Oh, okay. Because I remember you made a track where it was Paul burping, and then we're sitting there at Christmas at my grandmother's house, and we put it in, and Mom's, oh holy night, and the music was like blah 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 blah, just Paul burping, and it was hilarious. So no, you definitely have to have a lot of fun with stuff.
Well, it's important to have fun through the session.
Yeah.
Here, I'll leave you with a joke that a friend of mine told me. I have a
Okay.
friend of mine that at the end of every meeting, I make him tell me a joke, and then if it's good enough, it gets on my list.
Okay.
So I invented a new word.
Okay.
Are you interested in what it is?
Sure. Lay it on me.
Plagiarism.
Oh God. That's terrible. I like it. Oh no.
Yeah, it's my word. I invented it.
Oh, Tom. I will say this, Tom. One of the things that I've really appreciated about you over my lifetime is that you've always sort of reassured me that it's okay to have fun and kind of poke at people and be just a little bit snarky. Uh,
So I'm
you're
Mr. Snarky
a
to you.
little bit, yeah. You sort of got me to start misbehaving a little, or
Oh God, I don't
I was
want to
always
take
misbehaving, but
responsibility for that.
you always kind of told me, you kind of showed me it's okay to misbehave just a little bit, just don't overdo
No,
it.
I did not intend to tell you that.
That's totally what happened, though.
Oh
So
God.
yeah. So now I like to poke at people. Well, Tom, it was wonderful talking to you. Let's do this again. I'm gonna try and get. I need to figure out how to record something where we can have 3 way or 4 way. If we could get like you and Celeste and my dad on here, that'd be pretty cool, I
That would
think.
be fun, and you can talk about that,
Well, yeah.
go find that stuff out on the internet. Opera Made Easy. I think you'll find it. It's I forgot what the term that they put on it, but basically they said adult content.
Oh goodness, I might just have to go and put it up on a different website then, or I don't know. We'll figure that out later. I'm gonna look it up after this call, and I'm gonna actually I wonder if I can. We'll go. Well, I better look it up after the fact
Yeah.
just in case. But
Well, I would love to talk about the history because it was the beginning of the MIDI orchestra.
I didn't realize how cutting edge all that stuff. I mean, like I said, I was just a kid. I wasn't paying so much attention. But this, I guess I'll have to rethink a lot of what I thought about as a kid.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks.
All
Thanks.
righty, buddy.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do
Hasta
a
la vista.
hasta la vista. I'm gonna do a quick closing here. So I'm gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna thank everybody for listening to this video. If you made it through this far, if you like what we're doing, share the video to your friends, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and everybody have a good night. Tom, thank you very much. Good night.
Bye bye.